So we're going to look at concept both 2 and 3 in this link. It's important to understand. So concept 2 is discuss the 2 types of frontier and the patterns founded in each frontier. And then concept 3 is what makes the development of the American institutions and values unique, and what is an American in the fashion of looking at the frontier as a process. So very much what we're looking at is a very romantic idea of what it means to be an American, right? So there's kind of 2 stories to being an American. And this is a lot of what this lecture is looking at. The idealistic side of being an American, the side that we're proud of being an American, right? The opportunity, social mobility, freedom, liberty. And then the other side are the darker areas of our history. Side of taking land from people, enslavement of people, various wars, like the Vietnam War, which is very controversial, which we'll look at later in the later part of the semester, and Native Americans, right? So in the West, you have both going on. Very idealistic aspect of what it means to be American, and you have the story of what happened with Native Americans within that process of opportunity, freedom, social mobility, rugged individualism, which we'll look at later in this lecture, the story of Native Americans. So there were 2 types of frontiers. The first was the landed frontier, which existed from 1607 with the founding of Jamestown to 1890, which was 1890 marks, according to the U.S. Census, by 1890 all of continental United States was settled. So by 1890 it was understood that the frontier had been conquered, had been settled. Examples are the fur trade of the landed frontier, or the fur trade, the mining frontier, and the cattle kingdom. The second type of frontier is the industrial frontier, which started in 1860 when the United States was first recognized as an industrial nation, and has continued until today. Examples are John D. Rockefeller and the oil refinery industry, Andrew Carnegie with steel, Steve Jobs with computers, Mark Zuckerberg with social media. So those are just some examples of the industrial business frontier. Within each frontier, there are 2 patterns to be found. First, there is the primary frontier. This is the time period when the individual has a chance to become successful without investing a lot of money. It takes hard work, self-discipline, thrift, and a willingness to participate in the frontier. The primary frontier is generally replaced by the secondary frontier. The secondary frontier is the period where the individual has a much harder time at being successful. In order to be successful during this time period, large capital outlays are necessary for research and investment. It takes money to make money, in other words. So, for instance, with the business industrial frontier, at one point it was relatively easy to create a social media website, right? If you had the time and a little bit of background, you could create that. Now, trying to compete with, if you had an idea for a social networking website, trying to compete with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook would be quite difficult. And so definitely social media is in its secondary frontier phase. We'll see if, but I'm sure new outlets will crop up, but it will come but if they do, it'll be necessary for those people to have large amounts of capital, time, and investment, right? Compared to Mark Zuckerberg, who created Facebook in his dorm as a college student. All right. Looking at concept 3, what makes the development of American institutions and values unique, and what is and what does it mean to be an American, right? So, in order to understand and appreciate the development of our institutions, we need to discuss them from a historical perspective. In studying the history of our country, one sees the evolutionary development of our political, economic, and social institutions from a simple colonial organism to a complex units that we have today. Quotes from John Adams and Benjamin Rush help demonstrate this point. So Adams, the second president of the United States, reflecting on the American Revolution, said the following: "But what do we mean by the American Revolution? Do we mean the American War? The Revolution was effected before the war commenced. The Revolution was in the minds and the hearts of the people. This radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and affections of the people was the real American Revolution." Thus, the American Revolution was a process that started with our first representative government in Virginia with the House of Burgesses of 1619 and continued up through the Declaration of Independence of 1776. What was significant about the American Revolution, which John Adams was alluding to in his quote, was not that the colonists invented new principles, but within the context of the American environment, they realized the theories of the wisest European writers, the enlightened philosophers of the 16th and 17th century. So in Europe, there were all these lofty ideas about liberty, freedom, opportunity, social mobility, reason within the political institutions rather than relying on tradition and custom, of divine right of king. But those in Europe, those were just ideas, right? Just people coming up with ideas and talking about them and kind of stroking their chin and thinking, I'm thinking, right? In the Americas, it was able to become realized because it was a blank slate. There was an open and vast land for the taking, and in that open and vast land, those ideas were implemented. It was not new revolutionary ideas that brought about the American Revolution or changed the colonists' complacency with England. It was the revolutionary conditions of America's environment. Free land equals opportunity, which equals the frontier, which impacted America's social, economic, and political systems as they were transplanted from Europe and developed within this country. This process of European ideas being transplanted to America and interacting with the environment forced American thinkers to come up with new ideas to understand and explain their position. America's first continental frontier was the Atlantic coast. Its last was the Great Plains. As the frontier moved west, it became more American. Thus, the advance of the frontier meant a steady movement away from the influence of Europe and a steady growth of independence on American lines. The isolation of the frontier from England or the settlement moved deeper into the continent allowed for the development of truly American ideas, which redefined old values and produced new ways of looking at freedom, opportunity, and social mobility. This process was the American Revolution, as it reinforced the worth of the individual, both within society and to himself. This is what Adams had in mind when he said the radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and the affections of the people was the real American Revolution. The revolution was in the minds and the hearts of the people. The revolution was effected before the war commenced. In other words, the American Revolutionary War was fought to preserve what the American Revolution as a process had completed by 1776. Dr. Rush, a patriot from Massachusetts during the Revolutionary era, expanded on John Adams' statement. There is nothing more common than to confound the terms of the American Revolution with the late American War. The American War is over, but this is far from being the case with the American Revolution. On the contrary, nothing but the first act of the great drama is closed. For Dr. Rush, the first act was establishing the idealism of American society in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, knowing fully that they had by no means a reality within society in 1776. The second act is still being played out today as we try to implement the idealism of American society, to create equality of opportunity for all Americans regardless of race, sex, gender, religious affiliation. Thus, defining ideologies of the American system are freedom, opportunity, and social mobility. So this is basically the ever-going story that we're seeing from the colonial area to this very second, right? So when America was founded, the idea that women could actually vote was incredibly radical and would have thought to have been crazy. But as time went on, people generally accept that, right? Today, issues of homosexual marriage are very controversial, but are being more and more accepted by mainstream society. And it's very reasonable if this process continues that within 10, 15 years, maybe even sooner, it will not be controversial at all. So that will suffice for concept 3. Basically, that's basically the idea. The idea of the frontier is that it is a process that was quite solidified within the West and the way we think of it classically, like with cowboys and Indians, with the railroads, with the mining frontier. But that process of the West was playing out an age-old idea going back to colonial America, that the environment, the vastness of land, and this expectation and a sense of entitlement that if you work hard, anybody can take advantage of the opportunities that are available, regardless of your background and all sorts of things. That's the ideal. Obviously, reality is something else. And part of the reality that we're going to look at is the reality of Native Americans. That's what we'll look at in the next concept. So let me know if you have any questions or concerns by emailing me or talking to me in class. See you there.